Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Orson. Let's talk Magic. Today, I wanted to. We're going to get into discussing Standard a little bit because obviously the season's coming up. There's a brand new rotation happening. All kinds of exciting things. People are starting to get brewing on the websites and things.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually planning on going to a Grand Prix in May.
Yes, Minneapolis.
Yeah, Grand Prix Minneapolis in May. So
The end of May.
Yeah, the end of May. So like
27th.
We're getting our testing on. We're starting to brew a little bit. We're looking at what people are looking at.
This is very exciting.
Yeah, it is pretty exciting. Before we get into that, I wanted to discuss a little something that I noticed the other day.
Okay.
And it has to do... What brought it to my attention was the new Jace.
Okay.
So, I was reading an article on Star City Games, and they were talking about if you are playing a deck that has both blue and black, because there's a lot of them doing that now. There's Reanimator decks running around. There's potential control decks that are in blue and black right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're running a deck that's both blue and black, how do you choose between Jace and Ob Nixilis as your controlling Planeswalker, right?
Okay.
So, the argument boiled down to the fact that in that deck, they want to play Vryn's Prodigy Jace, and they chose Ob Nixilis because other Jace has the potential to not be playable once you have little Jace on the board, right?
Makes sense.
Which is fine. That's a perfectly legitimate reason to not play Blue Jace over Ob Nixilis. But I would like to point out the fact that you should always want to play Ob Nixilis over Blue Jace if you were in that scenario, whether or not Vryn's Prodigy was in the deck or not.
Mm-hmm.
And it got me thinking about the fact that I don't think people are very good at evaluating what makes a Planeswalker good.
Okay, that's a fair assessment.
Okay. And one of the things... Now, I'm not accusing the Star City Games writers of looking at the wrong things. I don't think they are. Okay, I think Jace is probably a playable card, but I don't think you should ever choose between it and Ob Nixilis. I don't think you should choose it over Ob Nixilis.
Okay,
and I'll tell you why. I mean, it should be obvious. It's creature removal takes care of the creature permanently.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now
on Ob Nixilis.
Yes, on Ob Nixilis. Jace's creature removal is a bounce. The upside of Jace is that he gets a scry before he draws, whereas Ob Nixilis loses you a life and draws, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, fine and dandy, that's all fine. I think it should be obvious. Some people think otherwise, right?
Okay.
That aside, it got me thinking about...
Real quick, why are the reasons they think otherwise?
I don't know. I think the life loss and the scry to them outweigh the permanent creature removal.
Okay.
Which I don't know that... I really don't think the weight there is a very good balance. I really think the permanent removal of a creature with Ob Nixilis is worth more than the balance of that.
Yeah, and I want to make that clear. I'm definitely pro Ob Nixilis. I'm on the side of playing him over Jace as well. But if we were going to try and just to argue another point here, if we're trying to say, well, why would you ever play Jace, Unraveler of Secrets, over Ob Nixilis, I would say it's because we're not playing black. But I know your argument. You're obviously saying
in this case, it was
black.
black versus blue, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to, for anyone watch or anything else, yeah, I mean, there are times you are going to play this Jace, but it's because you're not playing black. But
yeah.
We have to say to ourselves, how many times are we not actually going to pair blue and black together in this kind of what feels to be a two-color format?
Yeah. I think in a deck that is blue something that isn't black, right? Jace is a perfectly fine choice, right? There's nothing wrong with him. He's not the most amazing Jace ever,
he's
but
not
he's
actually.
okay.
That's what's crazy though. He's still not that good.
Right.
He doesn't really feel that impactful. I'm sure people are trying to say, well, I can do some sort of board sweep the turn before I play him, then play him, bounce the creature.
In a long-term control deck, he does have value. Okay, I would say he's not the most amazing Jace ever, but he does have value.
Yeah, but a lot of cards have value at 5 mana.
But the exact comparison of Ob Nixilis to Jace aside, okay, that got me to thinking: what do people look at when they look at a Planeswalker, right?
Okay.
And something that I have realized over the years that just sort of came to a boil yesterday whenever I was looking at this was people evaluate a Planeswalker including their ultimate.
Okay.
All the time. Like any time I've talked to anybody who is excited about some new Planeswalker or is trying to decide what Planeswalker to put in their deck, they talk at all about the ultimate. Which, when I look at a Planeswalker, I pretend like it doesn't have it, unless it's something that can happen like immediately. Right. Like you can tick it up and use the ultimate, or you can use the ultimate when you drop it. Fine. That's a relevant ability to take into consideration when you're playing it in your deck. But if it's something that takes 3 or 4 turns to set up, you may as well pretend it doesn't exist.
Right. It's an option in a very, very specific deck or situations.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. Whenever I look at a Planeswalker, I glance at what the ultimate is because I want to know what sort of really late game it could possibly do. But I'm not actually really putting that into my whole evaluation. Yeah, unless, like you said, it's something that takes maybe 1 tick or 2, and then you can pull it off.
It's certainly not something that you're building into your strategy. Mm-hmm. It's just a bonus if it happens to happen. Right? So like it got me thinking about there really have been a lot of times when I'll be talking to somebody about a Planeswalker, and the first thing they look at is, look what happens whenever you get to 8, loyalty or whatever. And I'm like, I had a blank spot in my brain whenever I looked at that card because I had no idea what the ultimate did. Because what really matters is its utility abilities. Right. So I think I really would like to look into it further and try to think just how much the ultimate on a Planeswalker is affecting people's opinion of it. What do you think?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, that would probably make a little bit more sense why whenever we are discussing a whole bunch of Planeswalkers and we're saying, well, this is how good it is, this is how bad it is, that would probably explain why people are really overvaluing something like Nahiri. Which Nahiri at least does go into the realm of, I only have to +2 her twice, the turn she comes down.
That's still pretty far.
The turn after, and then ultimate. That's not bad. We're saying 2 is okay.
Yeah.
But, and that part of her is fine. It's just the other stuff she does isn't really going to have an impact on what's actually happening in the game.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
You should play a Planeswalker because of its minor pluses and minus abilities.
For sure.
Because those are the meat and potatoes of every Planeswalker.
Yeah, and that's probably why whenever we looked at Jace, we said we're paying 5 mana to scry and draw or return a creature.
Yeah.
Sure, that's an effect we can hopefully maybe have over the course of a couple turns. But what is the real value of that?
I literally just had to read Jace again on the screen to remember what his ultimate does.
I remember, but that's because I have a good memory.
Yeah, I don't.
It's probably as I read the Jace to you the first time ever, as soon as I got to the ultimate, you're just like
blank. Huh? Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I have laundry I have to do. I'm just going to go do some laundry and maybe some dishes.
Yeah.
Are you done with the ultimate? Yeah, okay. Yeah. I'm done with dishes. We're good. Let's keep talking.
I really function like that, too. If there's something I know I shouldn't be paying attention to, I don't pay attention to it.
I know.
I never learned how to do multiplication of 9s because you can do it on your fingers.
That is the worst thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
9 times 1, you put your first digit down. 9 times 4, you put your 4th digit down.
Oh,
it gives you 36. I never learned how to do multiplication of 9s because of that.
Oh, my gosh.
I could do it if I sat and thought about it, but it's not something that just comes to me.
9 times 12.
No idea.
Wow. 108.
You can't do that on your fingers.
Well, exactly. That doesn't.
Yeah.
You got to actually still know how to. That's a whole nother. We'll have the math episode where we specifically talk multiplication of 9. Maybe, maybe next time. But yeah, you're right. Like maybe that's what people are doing. Maybe that's why they're misevaluating a lot of the Planeswalkers.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes part of their misevaluation is, and it used to not be like this, but in recent times, once we got to a point where people realized you can play a 5 or a 6 cost Planeswalker, they're kind of now saying, well, we've played with Elspeth, Sun's Champion in the past. 6 mana walkers are okay now. And they're not actually trying to evaluate anything else. We both identified immediately Chandra was amazing.
Right, Flamecaller?
Yeah, Chandra Flamecaller. We knew she was amazing. And, we weren't factoring because she's 6 or not because she's 6 or anything else. Not because we played Elspeth, Sun's Champion in the past. It's the fact that... Is it Sun's Champion? Man, I hope I'm saying the right one.
I don't know. Tyrael, maybe.
No, it's the... Hey, he says you can still use your fingers.
Oh, there you go. Good call, Donald K. Magic. Thanks for the tip.
I will read that later, and I hate you. You should not have helped him.
And now I never, ever have to learn my 9 multiplication.
You're the worst person I've ever met. No more from you ever again, unless you have something that pertains to me, okay? Pertains to me. All right, so, yeah, like Jace.
Yeah, and we looked at Nahiri and we're like, oh, that's rubbish.
Yeah, exactly. Nahiri.
Because all that matters is its first 2 abilities.
Right. And, at that time, I'll tell you what, though. Nahiri, now that the whole set has spoiled, looks a tiny bit better. And we said this at the time.
Because of a bit of madness, I guess?
It's not actually the madness. It's the fact that I have not been seeing a lot of really good enchantment or artifact removal. Now, not that she's
tapped artifacts.
As I say, not that she's great at getting rid of the artifacts, because it has to be tapped ones.
Oh.
But yeah, I know, it hurts me too. I can't believe I'm willing to spend 4 mana to now have a 2 loyalty planeswalker that removes an enchantment
with a caveat on whether or not it can be used as removal or not.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's you're right though. I think a lot of times people are just. I think everyone as a whole just misevaluates cards. Like the biggest card I've been reading about.
But I mean, that's something we can identify immediately as a root cause of Planeswalkers specifically.
Mm-hmm.
We could go round and round for an hour on why people maybe undervalue or overvalue a certain card, but the Planeswalker, I think that's a big part of it there. Is that people look at that 3rd or 4th line of text on the card and go, well, this is a thing that's relevant, and it almost never is.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what I was going to say, what I've been reading in articles is a huge misevaluation of Sin Prodder, which we were big on in our last episode.
Still big on.
Still big on, yes.
Yeah.
I just want to say that all you people that like to Magical Christmas Land a worst case scenario, I am still pleased and happy anytime my opponent takes the land off the top of my deck, puts it into my graveyard. I don't have to draw that land.
Let's expound on that, because you said a lot of things there that are things that you and I have said to each other. So you've condensed the argument.
Exactly. They have watched our show.
So what he's saying is that people are talking about Sin Prodder, which, if you don't know, is a 3/2 for 3 that at the beginning of your upkeep, you reveal the top card of your library.
Menace.
Oh, it has a 3/2 menace for 3.
Which I love.
At the beginning of your upkeep, you reveal the top card of your library. Okay. Your opponent can choose to put it into the graveyard. If they do, they take damage equal to its converted mana cost. If not, you put it in your hand. So it's either an extra card draw, or it's direct damage to their head. Obviously, there's one downside, is if they hit a land, they can chuck it into your graveyard for no downside.
There are 3 scenarios.
Right.
There are basically 3 scenarios. A non-land card on top that you get to draw an additional card that turn.
Scenario 1.
Or it goes into the graveyard and does damage.
Okay.
Scenario 2. And then scenario 3 is land into graveyard.
Right.
So
which seems bad on the surface of it, but that was an additional draw, which means that you're now potentially not drawing. You're definitely not drawing that land, and might draw something else good off the top.
Yeah, you're going to draw another card. I think people are sitting there saying, well, now I've lost this card. I've lost this land. You still are drawing a card for your turn.
Yeah.
It is not... It's an addition to. That's the important part. We are getting an additional effect here that there's 3 different scenarios. We're either doing damage, we're either drawing an additional card, or we're not having to draw a land off the top of our deck. I love all 3 of those.
The absolute worst case scenario for that card is you're stuck on lands and you turn up a land. That's the worst case scenario.
But you still already have 3 lands in play.
Yeah, because you cast the guy.
Exactly.
Right.
That's the important part.
Yeah.
So, once again, I'm very pleased with Sin Prodder. Whether or not he actually sees play really depends on the rest of the format. But the card itself is actually good.
Yeah. And Menace is not a insignificant ability to have.
And that's what I said in the last one. I love the fact that it's Menace because it now makes our opponent commit 2 blockers to actually get rid of this guy, other than removal, because all creatures die to removal. Don't even tell me that.
Yeah.
Okay?
It just dies a dead weight, man.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely.
It's a common.
So, what decks are you most excited about in the current standard, or what is about to be our new standard?
Well, we decided this week that we were going to actually slap some things together to try and start testing. They're going to be like almost 100% proxies, so we can't really start filming those yet.
But great news, we will be soon.
Yeah.
Right now, Orson's just kind of in between jobs, but why did you snicker?
Nothing. Go on.
Okay, right now you're still laughing. In between jobs, and once he does get a job, we are actually going to throw together some more standard playtesting videos for you guys. We did have a request, and we would like to fulfill that.
Yeah, I mean,
we love playing.
We were definitely intending to do that once we got a little closer and we started getting all the cards in. So that is going to happen. We are going to get back into the playtest videos, so it's going to be great.
Sure. So we were
within the next month. But yeah, okay. So yeah, we were talking about putting decks together, and I sort of hemmed and hawed over what I wanted to play for a while until I started watching a few other writers and such doing videos of their stuff. Right?
Ross Miriam and
Michael Masters.
No, Michael Majors.
Michael Majors, sorry.
Both those
Majors
last names
Masters.
are wonderful.
Yeah. So the two guys on Star City Games just put out a free video series of them testing some new standard decks together, and they did Black Red Vampire Madness,
which was bad.
Very bad. Versus Blue Black Reanimator. Okay.
Which I was already working on.
Yeah.
Total jerk.
Well, it was going to happen. It was bound to happen.
I know. People were going to figure it out.
So they're playing the decks against each other. They did a best of 5 match, 2 games unsideboarded and 3 sideboarded, and Reanimator just completely trounced the Vampires deck.
Okay, and so our viewers know, they haven't seen this video, why?
The Reanimator deck is the balls. I mean, just the nuts, the ridiculous amazingness.
No, let's go with the balls. I like it.
The balls in the good sense? I don't know why I said it like that. But.
First off, the balls are always good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's completely nuts. It's bonkers. Like, we already know for a fact that Jace, Vryn's Prodigy, is an unbelievable card. In this deck, it becomes even more unbelievable.
Okay.
He's running some madness removal spells that you can madness off of Jace, so you're just gaining value there, right?
Like Avacyn's Judgment.
No.
Yeah, that was in there.
Was it? Okay. So yeah, but he also ran Just the Wind.
No. I'm sorry. That was a different article that I saw that in. Sorry, that. You're right.
He was running Just the Wind and something else.
Probably.
Well, I know his removal package was Just the Wind, Dead Weight, and the Edict card, which name escapes me.
To the Slaughter?
Yeah, that's the Delirium one?
Yes.
Yeah.
To the Slaughter.
He definitely had those cards, and I'm sure some others I forget.
Okay.
But, like, he just sat back for the early game, controlled everything that the Vampires deck did, and then suddenly was like, all right, here's a slew of giant creatures that I'm reanimating.
And in the main deck, which you didn't bring up, is Red-Green Artarka.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So his Reanimator targets are Atarka, which also functions as removal to completely keep the board clean, which is unbelievable.
And it's an 8/8 flyer on top.
Yeah,
of that,
an 8/8 flyer
huge.
that does 5 damage, split however you like amongst their creatures. So you wipe their board, right? You keep their board clean, and then you wipe any little thing that they did the turn before you reanimate, and it's just bonkers. And then the other big thing it plays main deck is Geralf's Masterpiece, which can reanimate itself from the graveyard, or it's just a 5 casting cost 7/7 flyer. So
yeah, it gets -1/-1 for each card in your hand. So yeah, it can be a big beefy flyer, which in this deck you're trying to take a huge advantage of.
Yeah,
and it also has some other really neat cards like it's called like Mind Wreck Demon.
Yeah. 4/4 flyer for 4.
It's a 4/5 flyer.
4/5 flyer.
Even better, yeah.
For 4 mana and
4 cards on top of your library going to the graveyard.
Yeah.
And then if you don't have Delirium, it's going to do 4 damage to you.
Right, but it's pretty easy to get Delirium in this deck.
Right, for
Super
sure.
easy.
Yeah, and what's really important to note about his deck as a whole was 5 toughness was his magic number.
Yeah.
And the reason 5 toughness is so big in the current what is about to be our new standard is everything can just about handle 4 toughness. Everything.
Yeah.
Grasp of Darkness.
The Languish, Avacyn, they think might be a big contender.
Yeah, Avacyn does 3. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, the Kozilek's Return
does 2, and then whenever you cast a bigger one, it does 5.
Yeah.
But that's later on.
But yeah, but the point being that 5 seems to be that magic number that gets you past a lot of that stuff. So like, and not to mention that a lot of the mid-range to aggro creatures sort of cap out at 4 power.
Yep.
A lot of your, even the Eldrazi, other than Reality Smasher, I guess. Like your mid-rangey cards are in that 4 or 5 power kind of range. So it's a really good number to be at is 5 toughness. So let's flip over to the Madness deck for a second.
Okay.
The Madness deck was kind of what you would expect. It seemed like he was trying very hard to port the opening salvo of Blue-Green Madness into the current standard. So he had a bunch of 2 casting or less Madness enablers. He was playing the full suite of the Transform guy.
Okay.
I forget. I don't know these names yet.
Right. That's fine.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the one that flips and becomes a 3/2 flyer?
Yeah.
Okay.
You discard a card and it turns into 3/2 flyer, and he was playing like 3 or 4 of the one that -2/2, the werewolf.
Okay.
Right? And But I think where he went wrong was that he was trying to combo with it, because he was playing the 2/1 guy that turns all of your vampires into madness for their casting costs.
Right, which a lot of people are excited about.
And Olivia.
Right.
And the problem with that is that when is that ever going to happen? Like, when are you going to be able to change? Like, the dream there was to be able to cast a card, trigger Olivia's discard, so that you can cast another card.
+1 haste. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, trigger another discard to be able to suddenly madness out your whole hand. But there's only a handful of actual madness cards in the deck. You have to have the little 2/1 red guy that turns your other guy as madness. And by the time you get to the point where you can start doing that, your hand should be empty anyways.
Right. I'll tell you what it kind of feels like people are doing, and I've been noticing this a little bit more. I feel like people are starting to play Magic a little bit like they play Hearthstone. They're actually looking for these little combos, and they're expecting it to just kind of come together. Now, in Hearthstone, it's a hell of a lot easier because you're looking at a 30-card deck.
Yeah, your deck's a lot smaller.
Yeah, so it's a lot more consistent. Even though you can only have 2 of each card, the fact that it's 30 cards, you're going to see a lot of the same cards every game once you get to X, turn X.
Right.
So, in this Red-Black Madness deck, I think it is right to have some sort of like blue-green madness element to it. I think their problem is they are trying to add this sort of like combo element to it. And like you said, it doesn't really quite work because you have to have these pieces, and you also have to make sure these pieces are relevant at whatever stage of the game you're going to play this at. And that's really where the problem comes in. Against what people are perceiving to be decks of this, this next format is people think like a Planeswalker token deck is going to be something, and that's just a bunch of blockers. I mean, like they're going to have blockers for your stuff. Yeah. Someone's going to be able to Grasp of Darkness your Olivia before you can go through this whole combo. They'll be able to deal with whatever you cast on turn 3.
Yeah.
Like there's just too many ways for this combo element that they're trying to include in this deck, which isn't really that great. It sounds so great on paper, but in gameplay...
Well, there's 4 reasons why this deck lost, okay? One, the combo never happened. The reason the combo never happened, besides the fact that it's hard to get a combo in a deck with no search or card draw, besides that, is that the Reanimator deck played a lot of removal, was always able to get rid of his Olivia before it did anything.
Right,
okay?
Which is just
what Not to mention that he won extra fast because he reanimated the Olivia so that all of his dudes now had +1/+1 in haste. Like he was literally using the the reanimate spell reanimates from any graveyard. So he was reanimating the opponent's Olivia, and then getting his guys after that and giving them haste, and just beating down with them. Okay, and the other,
I feel like that was kind of just an unnecessary step, and he did that just to really throw it in the Red-Black Madness guy's face.
It's possible, but it did.
Seriously,
it did really
I would rather just do Artarka because the Red-Black Madness can't deal with an 8/8 flyer that just did 5 damage to your board.
Right.
Like, I feel like he's just like, you know what? I could even just reanimate a 3/3 and still smash you.
And that's the other problem too, is that even without Artarka wiping the board off, the little dinky creatures that you use to enable madness
all died to
quickly did nothing. Right. Very quickly were just pointless on the board. Like you got a few points of damage in the first few turns, but by the time, like the whole point of the Reanimator deck was to remove everything he did up until like turn 4 or 5 when he started getting his reanimate on.
Right.
And it was just a slaughter. It was really bad.
Okay, so other than this blue-black Reanimator being completely prepared for the Red-Black Madness deck, was the Red-Black Madness deck actually well built? Were there things that the Red-Black Madness deck could do to improve itself against this matchup or the rest of the field? Is there anything that you think that... was this deck lacking something?
I'm starting to get the feeling that an actual Madness-centric deck won't work.
Okay.
I'm starting to get the feeling that if you want Madness to be a thing in any deck, it has to be as value and not a synergistic strategy.
Which is really crazy because Blue-Green Madness was synergistic.
Yeah.
And that's what it looked like we were getting.
Yeah.
But I don't think set was being...
I don't think it gels with what the format has to offer besides SOI.
So against a non-Reanimator deck, you still think it's just not going to... Is it because people... I've been harping on Deadweight. Do you think that's the real issue here?
Well, Deadweight is amazing. But I mean, it's one of many reasons that the deck should not do well.
Okay.
One of many.
Because one of the biggest advantages that this deck has is the fact that it is 2-color in a world where, and that's also the Reanimator's big advantage as well.
Lovely 2 colors.
Yeah, so let's kind of actually, instead of just talking about the video and stuff, why don't we talk a little bit about what we have noticed as we were building decks and things that we have just think about Standard in general. Like, yeah, we know that this Reanimator deck is going to be something. We know that Red-Black Madness, maybe we haven't found the right build yet, but I'm sure something's going to pop up.
I don't think it's the traditional aggro tempo that that blue-green was.
Yeah, and that's interesting.
I think it's something else.
So that might actually lead us into, oddly enough, the Blue-Black Madness sort of tempo control.
Yeah.
That might actually be the deck to go, which is surprising considering how good the Red-Black Madness looked initially.
I mean, a Red-Black Madness might still work. It would just, I think it would be like more mid-range or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we're actually going to put together, and hopefully maybe next week or so, maybe we can have our own take on it, our own list, and let's see whether or not that works. But
I'm not even sure that an old-fashioned aggro strategy is viable in the format at all right now, because you seem to hit this like turn 4 or 5 brick wall where everything that your opponent casts from that point on just shuts down whatever you've done at the beginning. Like, like we tested a little bit of red-gray Eldrazi this morning, red colorless Eldrazi, right? Mm-hmm. And it's that same mid-range. You know, you drop a couple of diddly little creatures in the first 2 or 3 turns, and then once you start hitting turn 4 or 5, everything's big. So you have to be ready for that.
Right.
Like, I don't know that you can do an old-fashioned like sly sort of little tiny hasty dudes or whatever sort of strategy right now.
So it's interesting. So we have all these cards that are kind of overpowered for their cost, and we're thinking that aggro will not be a thing?
I don't think so.
Wow.
Not traditional. Not your turn 1 2/1s and your turn 3, turn 2 3 powers and stuff like that. I don't think it works.
I could see that.
Because by the time those things have swung a couple times, you might have taken, 9 to 12 life off or something. Okay. But now they're outvaluing you every single turn. And it's been the case in the past too. That's happened before, but it seems like it would be really consistent now. And it seems like almost every deck is going to be something similar to that.
Right, yeah. I mean, even the fact that you were playing, Thopter Engineer?
Yeah.
Yeah, Thopter Engineer, 3 mana, throws down another 1/1 body. Yeah. That's a 1/3 itself. Yeah, it does. It shuts down at least if they played a 2/1.
Yeah, and it's a little aggro itself.
A little bit of life.
Yeah, that's like the low end of that mid-range that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess it's kind of weird. So if we are into a mid-range world, what sort of deck do we see actually taking over? Like I guess what colors would have the best cards to deal with if everyone's kind of playing this style? What do you think just kind of says, well, I have the best at these costs? Like, I have the best 5-drop, I have the best 6-drop, maybe I have the best 7-drop. Like, I have a way to get to that point. What are those colors? I still like Sorin. And Sorin actually, my only problem I had with him before was the fact that if it was going to be super aggressive,
you're not going to turn up a lot of value off of him.
Yeah, but he was still okay.
Right.
He was still good because against that aggressive player, we could still gain life whenever we killed a creature.
Right.
So now, if we're talking a format where we're kind of all just going
like the 4 and 5
real late and it becomes a super attrition game, Sorin feels really good now.
Yeah.
He feels like a place I already wanted to be on Sorin.
You get a locked up board with a bunch of mid-rangey fatties in the middle, but he's in the back just clomping your opponent every turn or whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, this also, if this is true, if we don't really have too big of an aggressive deck, then what does that mean for like a Planeswalker deck that is trying to create tokens? Does that mean they're just going to overrun? Like, what do we have here? I mean,
well, it depends on. That feels like it depends because like. There's not a whole lot of people who are willing to run a lot of mass removal at the moment. Like, it's weird because we do have Languish and we do have Kozilek's Return, but like...
They're not good enough for the toughness. A lot of people seem to be playing big butts.
Yeah.
They're playing really large butts.
Yeah.
To prevent anyone from actually getting through or, prevent and kill whatever was attacking.
Yeah, so the non just straight flat destroy creature removal doesn't reliably get rid of that stuff.
Right. I mean, even that spoiled the 4 red or 2 red, 2 any, 4/9 flying haste I can't think of it's like Gold
Yeah,
Knight,
Angel or whatever.
Gold Knight Castigator,
Yeah.
something like that. I mean, even that, it's a huge butt.
Yeah.
So you're right. I mean, like Languish, Grasp of Darkness, like we were saying earlier.
They're going to be played, but it's going to be weird to find the spot where you want them.
Well, and I'm a really big control player, and I actually today I was cutting the Languishes out of my deck for more just traditional destroy all creatures. And I think that's just the direction we need to go, because even against some of these really aggressive decks, even the Madness deck has the option of throwing down a 3/5 for 3 mana.
Yeah, which was notably not in that guy's Madness deck, by the way,
Right.
which I think is a mistake.
Yeah, so that I do agree that should have been in there. 100%, they should have been playing the 3/5 twins. And that's an oversight on their part. But that also said, like, we're kind of creating very unique restraints on a control player.
Right.
Like, you can no longer just pay 4 mana to wipe your opponent's board. It might not get rid of their 3-drop. And there's now high odds, because of what we've been seeing out of the 4-drops and having 5 toughness or greater, it's not even going to deal with their 4-drops. So Languish actually just lost a huge amount of value in this particular format.
Now, if what we're saying is true, and it is sort of a mid-rangey, control-y sort of format, that means, and we've already seen it happen too, is that the new Edict card, the Delirium Edict, what is it? I forget.
To the Slaughter.
To the Slaughter. To the Slaughter is fantastic.
You know the reason
on or off. Like, if it's turned on, Delirium is on or off. It's a really, really good card.
Yes and no. Not if all of a sudden this Naya Planeswalkers deck is a thing and we're throwing out a bunch of tokens. So, like, I think it might be a little bit harder for control players to actually figure this out, only because a card like Languish is not as good as it used to be. So, yeah.
Reanimator, by the way, is completely a control deck.
It is, but here it's actually... It's so bad, though. See, okay, I want to talk a little bit about Reanimator, which was the deck I was going to build for our little playtest session today. The reason I decided, it's so good. Well, here's the problem. Let's just go right to the problem. Forget that. How do you answer it? What cards are available in the format to answer a big fat dude or to stop the combo from going off?
Yeah, I actually hit magiccards.info yesterday, and there's almost absolutely no card that just says get rid of cards out of somebody's graveyard. Like, there's one that lets the opponent choose like 1 or 2 cards or something like that.
Okay.
But there's nothing that's like exile your whole graveyard or remove target 3 cards from a graveyard. There's nothing like that. Especially not anything that's in a reasonable casting cost range.
And that's actually crazy. And I understand the reason they probably didn't provide us with any of those cards is because
it wasn't necessary before this. And now they want graveyards to matter.
They do, because of Delirium. Like, think about how hard it was drawing a Tarmogoyf sometimes. Now, what if it said Delirium, which is you have to have all these unique cards, and someone can just kind of pick away a certain card type, not have to worry about it. And we're in a world now where
they should really know better.
There's no fetch lands. They should. They should always have very simple, generic answers, no matter what. You are absolutely right. Yeah. But that's not the world we live in right now. Yeah. They seem to try and really push, hey, graveyard matters for this set, so let's make sure leading up to it, we don't really, let's let them have their graveyards. Let's let them get away with whatever they want. And the moment they let us get away with whatever we want, they decide they're going to spoil a card called Ever After. 2 black, 4 any, return 2 target creature cards from your graveyard into play. What?
Yeah.
I cannot believe that this card even exists, okay?
Well, especially
it's
considering
1 mana more.
Yeah, 1 mana more than the go-to reanimate spell for the format.
And it gets us 2 dudes.
Yeah.
Like, I went through a list as I was trying to figure out, like, okay, what's my reanimation targets? And I was like, I'm just going to put in standard, creature, and let's go all the way to the back page of converted mana cost. I want to see the biggest and baddest dudes. And you know what? Sure, there's like Kozilek, who's a 12/12. We got Nulamog, which is a 10/10. But, like, once you get down, there's all of a sudden, like, the 8/9 for 8, Trample. Everything seems to, like, fall into this, like, 5/7 bodies. And, like, 6/6s. And, like, it drops off quickly. Like, there's only just a few. It should, but, like, normally I feel like there's better targets up here. Or at least multiple better targets. Now it's like we just have all these, like, Dragon Lord Jamokas. And if that's really all you have as options, that makes Dragon Lord Jamoka really good against the format.
Jamoka is really good.
He is really good.
Yeah.
7 toughness. Like, what beats him in combat? I guess Dragon Lord Artarka?
Atarka, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much
and
it.
an actual Eldrazi Lord.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's something else. Like, I was actually going to be a little crazy, and I was going to throw a Nulamog in my Reanimator.
Yeah.
Because he's a 10/10, and he can't end the game because whenever he attacks, first off, he's indestructible. But whenever he attacks,
middle of 20.
Exile the top 20.
Yeah.
Like, that was kind of like, all right, well, if I'm in some sort of weird Reanimator, we're both against each other, like, because obviously I think that's going to be a big deck of the format going forward.
Yeah, for sure.
I was going to say, all right, well, I'm going to go ahead and play this guy just so I can win the mirror. That was at least my thoughts. And it's something that I doubt you can actually play it because we're just going to look to play him for like 5 or 6 mana. But, like, I don't know how a deck that isn't Reanimator can deal with me playing on turn 6, just dropping in a 5/7 and a 10/10.
Yeah,
I don't know what
it's actually really important to play that double Reanimator spell because it gets around things. Like say somehow they've taken out your Jace or whatever that you've been is the only thing you've had on the board all this time, right? Because you're tapping it to mill. Like that means that you are not susceptible to just flat losing to a edict. You know, which like I said, the edict is going to be one of the most important things. So like you still got a guy out. Oh, that's what he's just. Donald K. Magic says, I hear what you're saying about Dragon Lord Jamoka.
You haven't read the end.
But did you consider the fact that it dies the removal?
Oh, it dies the removal. I forgot. Why have we been playing this game?
Everything dies the removal.
No. I forgot. You know what? Dragon Lord Jamoka does die to removal, but there's a key point you missed, Donald K. Magic. He doesn't die to removal on your turn.
Yeah.
He does removal on your turn. So you're spending mana on your own turn, buddy. Remember that.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Which is always a bad proposition.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that you can't pay full mana, like, I get to pay 6 mana, I drop these 2 dudes. Now on your next turn, even if you did drop a seventh land, you not only have 4 lands to work with because you had to deal with my Jamoka. Because you know what? I'm not allowing you to pay 2 mana to take out my Jamoka. If we're going to go in this scenario, you had to pay at least 3. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say you had to pay 5. And that was to return to my hand and awaken the land of yours. Okay? Buddy.
Heaven forbid they chose to play Jace Unraveler of Secrets and they just stuck it in your hand.
Yeah. Yeah, the problem is you can't... you want to at least be able to replay the Dragon Lord Jamoka because you're not going to have green or white. You won't be able to replay your Dragon Lord Artarka either because you don't have green-red.
Right.
But the good news is we do play plenty of discard outlets.
Yeah.
So that we can just replay them anyway. Yeah, like... the fact that you brought up Jace Unraveler of Secrets again, like, I just don't know why people are really so hot about this guy. I don't understand why people look at him and are willing to spend $30. Like, how is it even possible? I think Mardu has potential versus Reanimator with Exile and Edict-based removal. That's
a good
Crawlster.
point. There's a handful of flash Oblivion Stone type effects right now, which is pretty nice.
Okay. So, like, Stasis Snare? That would
There's
be
at least 2. There's at least 2 of them.
Okay. That flash, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Blue-Black does have issues with enchantments. But then, okay, so now we have this, like, 2-deck format.
Well,
like,
I mean, it could span from there.
The real problem, though, is I said, like, we just kind of, like you were saying, aggro might not really be a thing. If aggro is kind of out of the format, well, then we just kind of have mid-range and decks that try to go above mid-range just competing with each other. And I don't really see where we get too much overlap or a whole bunch of new decks appear. And that's in that style field. Like, obviously we could be completely wrong because we haven't seen everything.
Well, if it shifts to where another deck ends up being flat better all the time than Reanimator, then the format will shift again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but
it's going to constantly be...
Standard always evolves.
Yeah,
it's always its own metagame changing week to week.
But I would say I'm pretty confident in saying that we both think at the moment, anyways, that Reanimator is the most powerful strategy right now.
Yeah, right now for sure.
Yeah,
and Mardu did lose its best card, which was Crackling Doom.
Yeah,
like Crackling Doom was just awesome against a Reanimator style deck, and now that that's gone, and like we said, yeah, he's sitting there saying, well, we can use this Exile and Edict based removal. I'm talking about playing Ever After. You're going to have to use 2 cards to my 1.
Right.
And you might be able to exile that, but I'm sure we're going to be able to find a way to deal with it. I just haven't looked at it too far. But I guarantee we have a way to get those cards back into our hand or back into play. There is always bounce permanents. Heck, you could even use, not Displacement Wave. Sure, that works. But what's the new one? It's 1 blue, 3 for each island you control. Bounce all non-land permanents. With that, the amount of islands or less. So if you had 4 islands, it would bounce. Or was it only creatures?
I don't know.
No, that one might only be creatures.
Yeah.
But either way, I'm sure if this did become a Mardu versus Blue-Black Reanimator actually does have ways to deal with it and get those cards back into play or so on and so forth.
Now, I guess we could start mentioning some of the other decks that people have been throwing around.
Okay.
Like people are saying that going into the format is an obvious carryover from the last standard is the red-green ramp, right? So red-green ramp, at the beginning anyways, may be there, and we have not seen it tested versus Reanimator, so who knows if it's great or not. It is sort of a similar strategy if you think about it, because you're doing not a whole lot the first couple of turns, and then you're suddenly doing big things. The difference is that Reanimator can spend its first 4 or 5 turns stopping you from doing anything, whereas Ramp is spending its first 4 or 5 turns ramping. And only ramping. And
the other biggest difference is, we're talking about in Blue-Black Reanimator, you get card selection. You're drawing additional cards.
Right.
Whereas the red-green ramp deck is constantly losing cards out of its hand and getting itself down to just a few cards it's going to play to try and beat you out of the game.
Right. So by the time you get to that nice key, like turn 5 through 7 or whatever, that is both of these getting to their meat and potatoes, you have nothing left in your hand for the ramp. And the Reanimator is still sitting on a handful of removal, potentially.
Not a handful, but they have at least several cards that should match up better.
Right.
So, yeah. Like
and any card they draw that isn't their Reanimate targets are typically something that either removes a thing or gets them card quality.
So. Right, exactly. Something that I noticed was I was sitting there trying to build a couple different decks in preparation for this new standard. Because, as we said earlier, GP Minneapolis is going to be May 27th through 29th. We're going to it. It's going to be a blast. We want to get ourselves right now into playtesting. We want to figure out what works, what doesn't work. We're with you guys. We want to try and figure the standard format out. And we want to win. We want to win the whole thing.
Yeah.
So one thing that I immediately wanted to test was I've been hearing just how bad Shard decks are. Esper, Bant, the mana is really rough. And we already knew that coming in because obviously we lost the fetch lands.
Right.
So I said, you know what, I'm going to sit here and I still want to build this because I just want to make sure it's as bad as I think it is. Because no matter how terrible or good we might think something is, it's still important to sit there and test it. You know, because sometimes you can be wrong. And I'll tell you what, the Esper deck, it was really bad.
Yeah.
It was rough. It was very, very hard to get the right mana.
You played a mixture of the show lands. And the black-white man lands.
Yep, Shambling Vents.
And then basics, right?
Yep.
And you even played a few of the... Did you play any of the tangos?
I actually played no tangos, even though I had more basics compared to the other time, because the way the deck plays with how many lands it has, I wanted to have lands that came into play untapped early that could add different colors. It was too important for what I needed to cast, whether it was Deadweight or some sort of counter, or being able to quickly ruin his path, something else. There was just too much. There was too much constraint on what colors I needed early that I could never afford to play the Tango lands.
So you built an Esper Dragon control, and what do you think?
Well,
like mana obviously was the biggest issue, but what else?
Okay, so the other big problem we had was, well, I kind of touched base with it just a second ago, which is I needed all these colors quickly. The problem that I really had with the Esper deck was there's too many double-costed cards early. Like I said, Ruinous Path, that's 2 black. Silumgar Scorn, that's 2 blue. Okay, like I actually cut back some of my Silumgar Scorn and replaced them with Clash of Wills.
And the Awaken counterspell too.
Yeah, and I had that in there too. Like there's a lot of different things that it's too much double costed and quick. And I also still had one Languish even in there, even though I said it quite wasn't that good. I still wanted to make sure that against some decks I could still play a 4 casting cost removal, mass wipe.
So it's definitely easy to say that 3-color decks are very, very tricky to play.
Especially if it has as much double costed as we're looking at with Esper or any sort of dragon-based deck that is using Silumgar Scorn, which I'm seeing a lot of people throw out there. And I think that's a big issue. I think it's something that we're going to have to kind of shy away from. And that's what I even did today. I said I had to cut some Silumgar Scorns. It's a great card. It's wonderful in a dragon-based deck. It just says, how could you not play this card? But if you're going to play 3 colors, I don't think you can. So we might be at a point where the only way to really play an efficient mana base and card selection dragon deck, if you really want Silumgar Scorn, you might actually have to play blue-black or blue-white. We might be suddenly saying, you know what, we're just going to have to go with Ojutai. Luckily, Ojutai is the best one.
Yeah, he is really good.
Yeah, he is fantastic. And guess what? Whenever you attack with him and now you did turn on a Silumgar Scorn, that's really powerful. It's really good.
So that's what you do is you have to make a choice between an amazing top end with Ojutai or an amazing removal suite with black.
Right.
That's your choice.
Well, I mean, you're going to have Ojutai in both decks, but,
In blue-black?
No, I'm saying if
I'm saying between blue-black and blue-white.
Sure. Well, the only thing I could try and...
That was shards there.
Got it. The only thing I would like to maybe try is if we could splash green in a blue-white deck, suddenly Dramoka. Dramoka is where I want to be at right now, the way this format seems to be shaping up.
So blue-white splash green?
Splash. Only for a very top-end Dramoka. I don't want any other green cards. Maybe it's not so bad. You know why? Because maybe we can go switch over to these show lands, and there's got to be, let's see, white matches up with both blue and green, right? So you just play the white-green show.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That works?
Yeah. It's still a shard, so yeah.
It's a shard, but it's not as bad if we're looking at we only need this land by the very, very late game. Look, I'm high on Dramoka.
Dramoka is awesome. I will not lie.
Yeah. Someone just said, just realized Infinite Obliteration can be used versus Reanimator deck that are low on counterspells, or even if you are on the play if they tapped out for Jace.
What's Infinite
Okay, so it's 1 black, 2 colorless, sorcery, name a creature card, and it's like Surgical Extraction. And it's that sort of effect. You exile all of it.
That's a good point. That's a really good point, actually.
Yeah, Infinite Obliteration is good.
Isn't there another? Is that the one from SOI? Or is there another one?
That one is from Origins.
There's one with Delirium from SOI.
Right, and that one looks at a hand. You can't name a specific card. It's only if they have it in their hand.
Oh, so that one's much worse.
Yeah, there's a lot of...
That's a good point. He's really right about that.
Yeah, and these are also great sideboard options, but I don't know how... That's only, as soon as you start going that direction to just try and beat the blue-black, what else does Mardu do? What else? Now we said we like Sorin. Sure, Mardu has Sorin. But what are you actually doing with Mardu to try and win the game? Tell us. What is your win condition? Chandra pretty hot.
Chandra and Sorin seems pretty good for a top end.
God, love both those cards.
Yeah.
Well, it's amazing how we went from a period years ago where it's like, all right, if I'm going to play a Planeswalker, it's got to be like 3 and then sometimes 4s. We're in a world now where these 6-drop Planeswalkers are just awesome.
They are too.
They are actually really just suddenly winning you the game. They're like completely changing everything you can do. Like Chandra just does so much for 6 mana.
There are, and he says dragons and Avacyn and stuff, and there are other there are other dragons and things that are worth playing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some beefy flyers and such.
Yeah,
and in red, you get some of the some of the beefcakes of the format.
Well, that's just trying to figure out. Like, I don't really... I guess red just for, like, Chandra and stuff. It's important that, I guess, with red and black, you are going to have a lot of the premier removal that you want to have against the early decks, but
you're not going to have card draw or card quality that you get out of blue.
Right, and that's my only issue with Mardu.
So
it requires that you draw the right sort of combo of cards.
You're playing a control deck without card draw.
Yeah, without card selection. We'll just word it like that, because sometimes...
I guess you can get some card draw out of black.
Right, actually...
And there is some good.
Painful Truth.
That's the
Converge.
Sunburst one, basically?
Yeah, Converge.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is Painful Truth.
Yeah.
I don't know, like...
Omnixilus has card draw.
Yeah, but he's 5 mana. I mean, you kind of need... As we saw with the Esper deck, I couldn't really, against your deck, play too much card draw. Not that there is even that many great.
So I guess we could talk about the red colorless deck a little bit.
Okay.
That's another one that's been ported almost directly from previous standard, and it is still really good. We haven't tested it against Reanimator yet, but it is really good as a conglomeration of cards at the moment. So like it plays, you get your beefy mid-range Eldrazi, you get your early turn token makers in like the Nalar couple. What is it? Kieran and something Nalar. I forget the name. Pia and Kieran Nalar. You get your engineer, your Thopter engineer, and it has a really nice curve, right? Mm-hmm. So whether or not it can stand up against Reanimator remains to be seen, because it has almost no way to deal with flying creatures at the big end.
Well, I mean, it has plenty of ways to block flying creatures.
That's true.
Plenty of ways. I mean, you're constantly able to throw tons of...
I guess
you can even have the 9/7 indestructible haste flying lifelink.
Yeah, I adjusted a little bit. I chucked a
Westvale
Abbey in it, and that seems really, really powerful.
Yeah,
it's not difficult to get enough creatures on the board to activate it. So it seems like that card is kind of the nuts. It's a 9/7 indestructible lifelink flyer. Haste, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually disgusting. I had so much trouble with my control deck to try and beat that card.
Yeah.
Like, I was constantly having to, like, play around it and do all this. It was just... I'll tell you what it was. It was bullcrap. Okay? I, as a control player, should not have to deal with any of... You guys are giving me too much hard stuff. I don't want to have to deal with this. I'm going to say the word shit, okay? I do not want to have to deal with all this shit you're throwing at me. Your 4/9 haste flyer red dudes.
Yeah.
Your 9/7 flying lifelink indestructibles.
It's actually a good point, is that I realized early, I can't wait to actually play a match like this on camera, because I realized early that he was playing a draw-go deck, which meant that anything that I cast ran the risk of almost positively being countered, right? So really early on, I realized that my mana base had multiple ways to keep creating pressure on the board. Because it runs the Foundry of the Consoles, and it runs. I ran 2 Westvale Abbeys, so I have ways to keep things out.
Total dick move, by the way.
Yeah. So like, that's going to be key. Stuff like that is going to be key to playing around the control games that I have a feeling are going to be pretty prevalent. So, are we? What else? Do you have anything else about the blue or the red colorless deck?
Well, not that I can get to today. Baby does call.
Baby calls?
Baby calls.
I've heard her very quietly through the wall here. So.
Yes. All right. Well, I can come back with a baby. We can answer some questions for you viewers on Twitch. Be sure to check us out on YouTube, Robin Orson. Also, we have a Twitter page, same, Robin Orson.
Yep.
And you're seeing us currently on Twitch. And if you're watching us on YouTube later on, do visit us at Twitch TV /Robin Orson.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, guys.
And we will be back for you viewers.
He's coming right back with baby, apparently. I wasn't prepared for this.
It'll be your first opportunity to see the little girl. It's exciting.
Yeah. That's the end of our official episode. But if you guys have anything you want to ask us or discuss or whatever,